Hey guys, it's Gary. Doing a video here while I can. I'm not really prepared, to be honest. It's been a while since I did a video. I don't even have my lights set up in the back that I usually do, because I got a couple hours before I go to sleep and go back to work tomorrow. I used to try to do. I took a look at averaged about 2 videos a week. I haven't been keeping up with that. Because of the work situation. Not much to say about the job. Tomorrow's Saturday. Weekend means nothing to me anymore. It's funny because it was, I think, on Tuesday of this week, I thought it was actually Saturday. That's how screwed up this job has made me with being aware of what day it was. It doesn't matter. I was working Tuesday and I work Saturdays and Sundays and Mondays, and it's crazy. But the way my job works is Saturday is the first day of the week, and it's a busy day. So they always have everyone work on Saturday. And also, since the clock starts on Saturday, nobody's gone into the over 40-hour type of thing yet. So if I am going to get a day off during the week, and I never know until that day arrives, I don't even know the night before. It's like, call in tomorrow. We don't have you scheduled, and we may have you come in and not. So you don't even know, like, gee, can I stay up late because I don't have to go to work tomorrow? You don't even have that option. I do it anyway. But Saturday starts the week for us where I work. Guaranteed to work Saturday. I worked my first Sunday last week, and that was an odd experience because how work goes is the place I work out of is actually in the town that I live in. I drive there in my car, and it's like a big warehouse industrial situation. From there, I get a company vehicle, and I leave to whatever area I'm working in for that day. Sometimes it's in the same town, or it's in a neighboring town a few miles away. Usually not that far. Sundays are slightly different. I don't know why this is, but when we work on Sundays, they don't have us go to our usual industrial building in my town and dispatch from there. They have us go about 5 or 6 towns away, which is odd because it's not even one of the towns that areas that are serviced from out of the office where I work. Now, oddly enough, as I found out last Sunday, the place that the other building that I had to go to, which for some reason we go to anybody that works on Sundays goes to this building. For some reason, my standard building, my computer might be slowing down again because every time I go to make a goddamn video, my processor starts going insane. I don't know why. And usually that results in me having sped down videos and problems. And I got a 12 or 15-year-old computer here, and it doesn't look like I'm ever going to get another one the way things are going. Anyway, on Sundays, for some reason, the building that I work out of that we get dispatched is not open. They send us a bunch of towns away. About, 10, 12, 15 miles, whatever it is. Oddly enough, where is this building that we go to on Sundays when you're scheduled to work on Sundays, and then you're dispatched from there in a company vehicle? And oddly enough, what towns do you end up working in? The same towns I work in during the week. So I drive all the way back up here to, in a company vehicle to work the local 5 towns that my normal building services, and then drive all the way back down there to drop off the vehicle at the end of the day, and then drive back up here to go home, which is strange in itself. The stranger thing, as I learned last Sunday, when this is the first time that I worked on a Sunday and I went to this new location, the building is situated right next to, within feet of the old office building that I worked at for 25 years. right next to it. It's physically the closest building, closest structure to my old office building, the job that I was downsized out of last year. Totally bizarre. And it's not like it's close to it, it's right next to it, where the very large parking lot for the office building that I worked at, where that parking lot ends, is basically a 2-lane road that's only traveled by people coming in and out of the office building. Right next to that is the next building that I'm working out of on Sundays, oddly enough. It's right there. So here I am, I go there to pick up a company vehicle and to get dispatched out of there and drive back up here for work. And all the time I'm just staring at my office building. I'm like, that's bizarre. This is New Jersey. This is really developed, Even if you work in the same town as somebody else, there's hundreds and hundreds of businesses in any individual town. Forget about and the fact that I don't work out of this town. I don't work out of my old town where my old job was. And yet here I was looking right at that building. And, there's still many people left there, not anywhere near what it was in terms of numbers. But some of the people that I kept or one or two of the people I kept in touch with still work there. They weren't there on Sundays. But it's just a really bizarre thing, And I wouldn't want to see them now because, this is a job where I get filthy and I come home and I got dirt on my hands and cuts and blood. One day I was working, I looked down, my hands covered in blood from just little surface cuts I got from work. It's friggin' awful. And the one advantage to working on Sundays, despite the fact that I've got to drive 5 towns out of my way, only to pick up a company vehicle, come back up to the area where I live, do my work in this area and the neighboring towns, which are the same towns that I would be doing the other days of the week, but at least out of my local facility. Then drive all the way back 5 towns again to drop off the vehicle and then drive back home, which makes a longer day, much longer. I don't really care that it's Super Bowl Sunday. I don't watch the Super Bowl. I don't care about it. I know I'm going to have to work it anyway. I'll still probably be out there working when the damn Super Bowl starts anyway. And by the time I get home, the first thing you do is jump in the shower. You don't want to sit down on anything because you're filthy. So the one advantage to working Sunday out of this other building, which oddly enough is next to my old job, which is that's too coincidental to just be a coincidence, if you know what I mean. It's beyond bizarre. It actually is one of the things that makes me think there's something beyond coincidence. A lot of things that happen that are coincidental, you say, wow, that's a really weird coincidence, but I guess it could be a coincidence. But, there's thousands and thousands of businesses. This is an incredibly developed area here in New Jersey. The likelihood that you would, end up being dispatched to a place right next to your old job. And I worked there 27 years, but I worked out of that location for 25 of those years. Bizarre. It was a bizarre experience. The one advantage to working on a Sunday is it's different bosses there at that building. And they don't really know me, and I don't have a lot to do with them because I'm basically in there for, a half hour, an hour before I get dispatched, whatever. The one advantage to being there on Sunday is that I don't have to go to my main office, which isn't open that day, and deal with getting yelled at by the bosses there who are not so nice. There's one decent boss there. Hasn't been around for a week, so I don't know what happened to him. Hopefully he's just on vacation and not left or gone to another office or something. But most of the supervisors there are nasty and treat you like a child and yell at you. So the fact that I'm working out of a different office on Sunday, I don't have to see them. And it gives me the possibility of maybe having a day off, maybe, just maybe, having a day off on any of the other 6 days, usually Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, when it's slower. Which means, it's one less day I may not have to go in the office and deal with seeing the bosses I don't like. Hence the only real reason why I would want to work a Sunday. But in this job, if they're busy, they would probably rather not pay overtime over 40 hours. But to be honest, if they're busy, they don't care. They'll have you work 7 days a week. And in fact, I would have worked 7 days this week if I didn't have to bring my car in to get repaired. And that's another thing. I had an auto repair, which I went and got done today because on, I don't know what today is, Friday, I think. I wasn't actually scheduled to work on Friday, which means nothing. It just means that they'll call you up at 7 or 8 or 9 in the morning and tell you to come into work. But as of Thursday night, I wasn't scheduled to work, so I called the boss and said, "Look, I got car maintenance. I got to get done. So since I'm not on the schedule yet, is it okay if I just don't put me on the schedule for Friday, and I'll go get my car maintenance done?" And I love sitting, in the waiting room for 5 or 6 hours while they do $450 worth of maintenance on my car that I'm not even sure if I need or not. So now I got a big fat $450 bill from standard car maintenance that I don't even know if they're doing the work, if they're ripping me off or not. You don't know, because I don't know anything about mechanicals of cars. So, and wouldn't you know, when I got home, they had called me into work, even though I spoke to one of the supervisors the previous night saying, "Hey, since you don't have me scheduled, I need to get this done, so I'm not going to be around." So I left before 7 in the morning, and apparently around 8 o'clock in the morning, they called looking for me for work. When I called them back in the afternoon, though, I spoke to one of the supervisor I had told I was getting the work done, and she was like, "Oh yeah, okay. Well, I told the guy who called you that you were off getting your car work done. Thanks." But I can't schedule anything because, you don't know if you're going to have the day off. Just because they don't have you scheduled for a day to work doesn't mean they're not going to call you and expect you to come in. So it's an awful thing. And at any minute, it's right now, it's 7:15. My phone could ring. I know I'm going in tomorrow, but, they could call me. They've called me as late as 9 o'clock at night to change the time that I come in the morning, come in earlier, whatever, So that's me bitching and ranting and moaning, and I'm doing it to get it off my chest. I don't expect anybody to listen to it, really. And, I've just, and today alone on the car maintenance, that's more than I would take home in a week, which kind of kills me, on top of all my other regular bills that I've got, water bills and, all the normal bills that people have, all this, everything. So the only thing that really made my life worthwhile this week was, I'm playing music in the background, but it's so low I doubt you can hear it. Carm, who is probably not going to see this video because he's away, our buddy Carm usually takes, from what I recall last year, and he's doing it this year, takes the month of February off and goes away to warmer climates and stays off the internet for the most part. The last thing he did before he left, and he's such a sweet guy, he knows my situation. So what's the last thing he does? And he's got to obviously have a lot of preparation to do when he's gone for like a month. I imagine the stuff he's got to pack. And for us folks, just when you take a trip like that, a big part of packing is, oh shit, what music do I take? Because I couldn't be away for a month without doing extensive planning on what music I may want to hear and have to take with me. And I'm pretty sure he physically takes CDs with him, versus, just taking an MP3 player or something like that. So the last thing he does, I got to go off camera. Hold on. Very professional. So just about the last thing he does is, said that, and I got this, I think a day or two before he left, and I shot him an email saying thanks. And I didn't know when I was going to get an opportunity to do a video on it. He sent me a few CDs, and he one of the things he has, if you know Carm, he's a big fan of the Starstreams radio program, and he's got cassettes of Starstreams going back to, I don't know if he goes into the late 80s with it. I know he goes into the early 90s with it. and he'll take these cassettes, and it's a 2-hour program, but I think they may do commercial breaks. I'm not sure, because he seems to record them on the 90-minute cassettes and pretty much get most of the program, if not all of it. And then he will take the cassette and dump them over to CDs. And because it's a little bit over 90 minutes, it's 10 or 12 minutes longer than you could fit onto a single 80-minute CD. He breaks it up into half, so he's got about 46 minutes per CD, the first half and second half of the show. And he has certain favorite Starstream shows that he dumps over onto CD, and then he sends them out. He sent me a bunch. I've got them all dumped into my computer. As you may be able to read, my computer's doing it again with this damn processor. As you may be able to read, this episode features David Sylvian's Gone to Earth album. Not the whole album, just a few specific pieces off it. This is a very odd episode of Starstreams. I noticed that Starstreams, unlike the old Echoes radio program or Music from the Hearts of Space or all those, they don't necessarily go for a theme, a musical vibe throughout the whole show, because this show is all over the place musically. It's quite odd. There's a Giorgio Moroder synthesized disco track, really up tempo, and a lot of synthesizer material, but not things that flow together well. It seems like they're more interested in covering a lot of ground or whatever. Most of this episode is synthesizer stuff. I've got it done to my computer. I'll listen to it twice. But there is one thing on here which is really out of left field. It's like a modern harpsichord or clavichord. I think it's a harpsichord recording. So like that acoustic instrument. Just solo, a guy, a keyboard player, recording his own new pieces on a harpsichord thing, which is completely acoustic and comes out of left field. I think it's a harpsichord. I haven't listened to it since I listened to it the first 2 days that it was sent to me, which is about a week ago now. Pretty sure it was a harpsichord. Very, very interesting. Odd episode of Starstreams, though. It's all over the place musically, and definitely not a sustained mood throughout, but interesting nonetheless. And all the other things that were sent by our buddy Carm are Tangerine Dream related, which we do a lot of talking about, and we all have a lot of albums by and all that. He sent me a Jerome Fressa, Edgar's son, recording Shiver Me Timbers, which is fairly recent. Well, recent to me, 2007 is not that long ago in my mind, but I guess it's old for some people. And I've always kind of gone on about my dislike for Jerome Fressa and basically how the music changed when he joined Tangerine Dream in 1990. And to me, the music went downhill very fast after he joined. And actually got better after he left. I blame a big part of it on Jerome Fressa, and I still do. But Edgar was also compliant. They're definitely wanting to change the music in a much more commercial direction, too. One of the things I particularly didn't like about it is Jerome, when he joined the band, was a fairly young guy in 1990. And it seemed like he was under the spell of Eddie Van Halen. It brought in a lot of screechy electric guitars, which I did not like. And, kind of really aggressive, rock and roll edge. And even when he wasn't playing that much guitar, they would hire other guitarists, which was a really weird thing to me because Edgar plays lead guitar as well. And they would bring in other guitarists, especially for live albums and tours, that was also playing in that kind of Eddie Van Halen style. And, sometimes you got two guitars going along screeching, and I didn't dig it. Later on, though, oddly enough, the guitars got toned down a little bit on some of the recordings. But they went into a real techno thing. And to be honest, I'm not a hardcore fan of techno. I'm not even a fan of techno in general, but I can appreciate it. And I thought that was maybe a little bit better because the guitar thing was just overkill, and I thought it was really awful. And again, it was the guitar thing that Jerome kind of brought into the band. I think those were his tastes. Edgar definitely went along with it. And then the techno thing I didn't like so much because a lot of the music that came out of that era, which was definitely what Jerome was into, sounded like rhythm tracks with nothing, with no melodies or anything too interesting happening over them. The music better made for like driving and half paying attention to than really sitting and listening to. And I tried like even the Dream Mixes stuff I bought and listened to. And I can appreciate at times, but it sounds like there's something missing. A lot of the stuff actually sounded a lot like the old 12-inch dance versions of tracks, of pop music tracks, when they would take out the vocal. And you'd basically be left with the rhythm track, and there was nothing interesting going over it. They didn't fill it in with a saxophone or a lead instrument line. It was just the song played without a vocal and a kind of more of a more up-tempo rhythm mix. And that's what a lot of Tangerine Dream stuff started to sound like at the time. Not where I wanted them to go, but possibly a little bit better than the screechy guitar stuff, which I didn't dig. But still, it was far from what I was hoping the band would evolve into. And I really got down on Jerome when I read that his least favorite album of all the Tangerine Dream albums, which not the ones that he appeared on, just all of them, because his dad started the band, so he's heard them all, was Zeit. Zeit happens to be my favorite Tangerine Dream album. So when I heard that was Jerome's least favorite, considering what he already did to the band in my estimation, I was really down on him. There's a couple decent albums, though. I had lesser expectations, definitely, when he was in there. But there was a couple decent albums, and I think one of them was, Oasis, which I don't know how much he had to do with. But it was, credited to Tangerine Dream, the Oasis, which was a video soundtrack, but it was pretty good. I don't recall there's any guitars on there. It got back to a keyboard thing. Not too much in the techno thing, a little bit more atmospheric. Probably, I'm just going through my mind. Jerome was in there for a long time, but probably just about my favorite thing done when Jerome was a full member of the band was probably that Oasis video soundtrack, which was pretty good. And it was just, if I recall correctly, it was just all keyboards. And no additional members. It was just Edgar and Jerome. At the time, that was the Tangerine Dream lineup. And I think they pretty much left the guitars off that one. A little bit more atmosphere, a little less of the techno stuff. So it was okay. And but Jerome left the band, and I was all for it because they got Thorsten Quayesching, or however you pronounce his name, which I think is one of the best members ever to be in Tangerine Dream. And the music changed considerably with him in the band, and his composition is just fantastic. And that's why I'm happy that the band is, for now at least, continuing with Thorsten, after Edgar's passing. Because I think he's really one of my favorite musicians ever to come into the band. So, based on my experience of not being too crazy about Jerome Forest's contributions, every once in a while, I got to admit, maybe get into a techno mood, and I would go put on one of the albums that he made with Tangerine Dream. I didn't expect much out of his solo career, and I didn't dive into it because there's so much good music out there. But when I got this, I was surprised. I definitely, it's not like, I'm not going to play this. I loaded it in my computer, and it's in my computer to where I listen to all of my music from. I continue to play it. I played it every day. A lot of times in the background of me doing things around here, whatever. But I played it every day since I got it. And oddly enough, I guess, he's grown up a little bit. He's developed more of a sound. Not what I expected. He's gone back to a lot of guitars and a lot of processed guitars. But I was expecting from his progression in Tangerine Dream to basically be almost like a remix synthesizer, heavy techno thing at very least. And even though if you don't listen closely, you'll think you're hearing a lot of synthesizers, and they're definitely on here. It seems like he's more guitar oriented, which is where he started, but not in the Eddie Van Halen kind of screechy guitar mode. There's definitely a modern, slightly techno vibe, but I think he's gone beyond that. And a lot of guitars. He does most of the music himself. He's only got a collaborator on a couple tracks. And this is Shiver Me Timbers. It's a long album. It's over 70 minutes. And it's it's pretty damn good. It's got a modern edge, and I'm not one to just follow the whole, whatever has evolved, post techno, I guess. Um, but he's definitely found more of his own voice than just emulating Eddie Van Halen on one side, or just standard run-of-the-mill techno music on the other side. Um, he really seems to have his own voice here, and I have to be honest, it's actually better than 90% of the albums that he recorded with his father as Tangerine Dream. Um, I wouldn't say it's probably not as good as like the Oasis soundtrack that I mentioned earlier, but it's better than Goblin's Club and Raccoon and the the dance. What is that? The Dream Music Remix series. Um, I'm really impressed by this. Really, really, he's developed something. He's not a young kid anymore. He's just younger than me, but I'm very pleasantly surprised by this, and it's probably going to get more spins than the Tangerine Dream material that he performs on. I'm very pleasantly surprised, and Carm did leave me a note saying, yes, I know the infamous one. He didn't even name him, but I know that he's referring to Jerome here, because I've often been very vocal about my dislike for what Jerome brought into the band. I wouldn't steer you wrong. This is very good. At times, sounds like a more updated Ashra Temple. And, I can hear that. He doesn't do, thankfully, the Eddie Van Halen guitar scream distorted thing so much anymore, even though the music's guitar-oriented. He's developed more than I would expect him to. And I enjoy that album more than I would ever expect to. And like I said, besides the Starstreams episode, everything else Carm sent me was Tangerine Dream related. Steve Jolliffe, who didn't play long, I've never had a Steve Jolliffe solo album before. It's the first one. This one's from 1981. It's a bit short. That's my only complaint, pretty much. About 36 minutes, but it was, LP vinyl running time, pretty much standard at the time. Now, Steve Jolliffe was somebody I always wanted to get into, and I wanted to sample a solo album, but I didn't jump into it because, there's so many albums out there. He played an early edition of Tangerine Dream very, very, very early in the band, and didn't record with them because he had left the band by the time that they recorded. And it may have even been before their first album, or between their first and second album, somewhere way back there. And it was during a period that they didn't record, and so I guess he was only in the band for a number of months back then. And years later, infamously, after Peter Baumann left the band in around 1977, and Tangerine Dream had gone down to just two people, Chris Frank and Edgar Fruesa, Edgar called up Steve Jolliffe again, and Steve came into the band. Now, Steve Jolliffe is primarily, and what I knew about him, sax and flute player. And they recorded the 1978 album Cyclone, which to me is one of their major disasters in Tangerine Dream history. And the reason why was not Steve Jolliffe's playing on sax and flute. I kind of liked it, but he sang as well. And this was 78, and there's a whole punk thing starting. And the vocals that he sang were very punk-like, not even melodic or anything. Really didn't fit in with Tangerine Dream's music and pretty much ruined the album. And I've only bought the album in recent years. All that said, I knew that Steve did solo albums, and I was still curious to hear what he did. And I did like the sax and flute playing on Cyclone. But I didn't know a great deal about Steve, and I knew he had come out with a bunch of solo albums, and it's one of those things, one of these days I'm going to get one. And so Carm sent me one of his 1981 solo albums. It's got four pieces on it. It's all Steve Jolliffe, playing keyboards, which I didn't even know he played until I heard this album, saxophone, flute, and voice as well, and two guitarists, both playing electric and acoustic guitars. One of the guitarists is Tony Duhigg, D-U-H-I-G, one of the two founding members of Jade Warrior. Jade Warrior is a band I have a kind of mild interest in. I have a compilation album, double disc, by them, kind of like a late 70s instrumental, kind of in the prog rock thing, you know, but they brought in world music influences. Interesting band, unique at the time, doesn't sound quite as innovative today, and maybe a bit too rockish for my tastes, but Jade Warrior was an excellent band. They still kind of exist in a way. But recently I found a Jade Warrior album recorded in late 80s or early 90s now, I forget. Somewhere between 88 and 90, I think, called At Peace, which was basically dubbed as a new age album and dismissed by its hardcore fans. Now, its hardcore fans, though, like the rock edge, and this didn't have any rock edge. It was no percussion at all. And it was just down to the two original members, Tony Duhigg on, I don't even think there's much guitar in it. He's playing mainly synthesizer on there. And the other guy whose name, I forget, Fields? I think his last name is Fields, who plays flutes very nicely. And it's a great ambient electronic album, this album At Peace. Unfortunately, has been out of print for many, many, many years and was only issued on this little independent label. And the whole album is available to hear on YouTube. And I heard it, and I just had to bite the bullet, and I bought a used copy for like $22. It's the cheapest I could find it. I haven't gotten it yet, but I've heard the whole album. I've played it a couple dozen times. It's only a 43-minute album called At Peace by Jade Warrior. But anybody that likes more meditative electronic music, it's absolutely a classic. And copies seem to be really hard to come by. But the whole album, it's only 3 tracks long, is up on YouTube if you look for it. So when I saw Tony Duhigg played on this, who sadly passed away quite young, a number of years ago, I thought, wow, this is probably going to be a good album. And it's a good album. There's a couple things I would change about it. One thing I didn't know about Steve Joliffe, since he didn't play keyboards on the Tangerine Dream Cyclone album, I wasn't expecting the album to be very keyboard heavy. And what you hear on here is a lot of acoustic piano that's played really well. Well, after hearing that, I'm like, is that really Steve? The piano playing is really good. I ended up going on the internet. Well, Steve's got his own website up. And on his website, he's got a biography that's one of the most open and honest biographies that I've ever seen an artist put up about themselves and about his life. I think it might be just stevejoliffe.com, but I would recommend looking it up. And I had to shoot him an email saying, wow, this is one, because I figured I got the impression that he was very active in his own website. This isn't something necessarily managed by, an army of other people for him. It very much looks like he wrote the biography. And I dropped just a note to him saying, hey, I just got this album called Journey of the Body. Journey Out of the Body. And I really like it. And I read the biography, and I really appreciated the honesty about his life that he put in there. He doesn't try to inflate himself. He talks about, the period where he played with Tangerine Dream in 1978, and then, left the band shortly after the tour for that album, and found himself working in a factory weeks later just to earn a living. A lot of musicians don't really talk about that. They don't like to have that impression, they have to really do some other job for a living. And he was very open and honest about how that made him feel and the difficulties he's had through life. Very open and honest. He's written, and I found out later, an autobiography as well that the biography online is based on. It's only 100 pages, though, and you can order it from his site, but it's a little pricey for 100 pages, but I think I want to get it anyway, at some point when I can afford it, because obviously he wrote it himself, and it looks like it's in more detail than the online biography. Really interesting guy. I definitely want to get more albums by him. There's a few things on, there's no percussionist per se on the album. I do hear some drums, not a lot, some percussion, I should say. I was very impressed by the keyboards, and went online, and in the biography that Steve Joliffe wrote on there, you learn that keyboard piano was his first instrument, and that's really where he started. So it's no big surprise to find that he's actually a better keyboard player than like Edgar Foressa is. So I don't know if when he toured with in '78 behind the Cyclone album with Tangerine Dream, if he played keyboards on stage, but I'm willing to bet he would have. Certainly talented on the keyboards. Love his sax playing, but especially love his flute playing. There's a couple things he does voice things. Sometimes he's just like talking along with the music, which I don't think is needed. There's this is from 1981, so sometimes there's a little slightly dated sound to the synthesizers on occasion. I don't mind it, but there's moments where the synthesizers sometimes seem to be doing a kind of thing where it's like they're playing an effect, like more of a sound effect than a musical effect. And that might be okay for a lesser artist, but at the moments that the synthesizer is playing these kind of sound effects, there's some really cool music going on that totally clashes with it. There's enough going on musically and enough chord changes and interesting instrumentation with the piano and the synthesizers and the guitars and the flutes and the saxophones that you don't need the synthesizer to be making these whoop whoop sounds and this kind of thing. That doesn't work. That can be reserved for guys with less talent, less music ideas. So there's a couple moments when there's synthesizer sound effects that are really not needed because there's so much else going on musically that's really good. Nice chord sequences. Actually, this is much better than I expected a Steve Joliffe solo album to sound like. He occasionally does things like, I don't really need him talking during some of the music. And it's somewhere between a talk and a chant, but it's not quite a chant. Takes you out of it a little bit. But, I like guys that are reaching, and they don't, and especially maybe sometimes an experiment won't quite work for me. But that's okay. I would rather have them do that than play it safe all the time. And definitely the couple less than perfect things about the album definitely do not really detract from my enjoyment. And I would never not play it because, it's got some stupid synthesizer sounds on there. It's not like that. There's enough musically going on, with the really nice keyboard work. He's a much better keyboard player than I ever expected. And I love his flute playing. And Tony Duhigg from Jade Warrior's on there, and that's great with me. And then the last, I think the last one, that Carm sent me is one that I've really wanted a lot. Tangerine Dream Blue Dawn. This is really hard to get a hold of. This is an album that came out a few years ago on the Tangerine Dream label Edgar put out, 2006. So it came out 10 years ago, but let me tell you something. It's been almost impossible to get from the minute it came out. It's on Eastside, or Eastgate Records, which was Edgar's own label. I never saw copies float over to like Amazon, even as expensive imports. I saw copies on eBay for $50 and $60. And eventually, a few of the tracks ended up on Tangerine Dream compilation albums. And that's where I heard three of the tracks from the album there. Two of them I absolutely loved. And it's very much in the mode of late 80s, which is when the material was originally dreamed up initially. And I kind of like that period with Paul Hasslinger in it and Edgar. And when the band got down to just Edgar and Paul Hasslinger after Chris Frank left, they recorded albums like Optical Race, which I actually liked, and Lily on the Beach. And they were down to two people, so when they went on a tour supporting Optical Race, which I think was the first album they did just as a duo with Paul Hasslinger and Edgar Foressa, they had to hire a third person, and they got this keyboard player, Ralph Wadpole, Wadephul, I think is how you spell it, as a third keyboard player to, flesh out the sound when they played live. And for whatever reason, Ralph didn't stay with the band or in the band. But they did this 1988 tour, and Edgar started writing some material with him as a duo, which is weird because Paul Hasslinger was still very much in the band at the time, so I kind of don't understand quite why Paul Hasslinger wasn't involved. But Edgar started writing material while they were touring on the road in their spare time on this 1988 tour with Ralph Wadephul, and they never really finished the material, and they never put out an album, and Ralph left the band. So about 2005, 2006, Edgar calls Ralph up again and says, hey, let's work on some of that material and finish it up. And so they went back. It's not clear how much of the material is actually original recordings made around 88. Probably very little of it. It was more some compositional ideas, I think, that they started in 88, and they fleshed out maybe some basic tracks. And then, 2005, 2006, they finished it and added it and used more modern synthesizer sounds. But I heard 3 of the tracks, 2 of which I absolutely loved, and Edgar's credited with 4 tracks on the album, and Ralph Wadephul is credited with 6. It seems that the 4 Edgar tracks are Edgar all solo. I don't think Ralph plays on those 4 tracks at all. And what apparently was going to happen is then the rest of the tracks that Ralph contributed probably were going to be just all Ralph by himself. So not really so much a collaboration together. But then Ralph recorded his tracks, then asked Edgar to play guitar solos on some of them, probably more than half of the 6 tracks that Ralph contributed. So at least on Ralph's tracks, there is a bit of a blend because there's a lot of Edgar Forrester guitar, and it sounds very much, there's my phone, and it's probably work. Yeah. What can I do about this? I don't know. Well, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to move my microphone, and hopefully whoever leaves it. The problem is, my only setup here, oh good, they didn't leave a message. Didn't I say that could happen? I don't know if it was work or not. I didn't recognize the number. Oddly enough, my only setup here, and I can't, because I have a desktop computer, and, I have my microphone and my webcam, and they have to be within a couple feet of the computer, and unfortunately, my telephone answering machine is about 3 inches away, and I can't, because of my physical setup, I can't put my answering machine anywhere else. It's got to be plugged into my modem, and my modem is right here at my feet. And so if somebody calls, leaves a message on my answering machine when I'm recording a video, my microphone is 3 inches away from the answering machine, and there's no way on earth, unless I get my entire house rewired, that I can hook up anything else. I can't even set up my answering machine in another room. It's not physically possible. So anyway, this album, very much in if you're familiar with the optical race, the late 80s period of Tangerine Dream music and Edgar Forrester and Paul Hasslinger style, it's very much like that. I don't think it's quite thematically as sophisticated or as involved as like Optical Race, where there were some really good themes on there. It's a little bit looser than that, but it very much fits in with that era if you happen to like that era. Blue Dawn is a great album, but I've looked for copies for this for 6 or 7 years easy. And the last one, the day that I got it, I looked. And the only place I could find a copy was on eBay, and it was like $47 and like $4 shipping. I even went to Tangerine Dream's site. They don't even sell it on their own site anymore. That totally blew me away. I don't understand that. I was going to bite the bullet at one point and buy it from their own site in Germany, knowing, the exchange rate sucks. I'll be paying a lot for shipping and handling. Obviously, from Germany, it's a little, their own little site. They're not going to really give you a break at the Tangerine Dream store. But I was going to bite the bullet, and when I went there to buy it, it wasn't even available for sale, which is really weird. How can they not? This is one of their albums that they own the rights to, that they have control over, and they don't even sell it anymore on their site. That totally blew me away. So when I got it, I'm like, where the hell did you get it? Where did you get it from? I felt bad because I knew it was not cheap. But Carm has his way. He said he got it from another site in Germany. He knows a place in Germany, that sells records, but still, that's not going to be cheap. And you're still paying all the shipping and everything, whatever. It's a great album, and if you like that optical race period, and that's one of the few periods post '70s that I do like from Tangerine Dream. So I've been listening to that a lot, even though I was familiar with 3 of the 10 tracks. I'm quite surprised how much I like the other tracks as well. The 3 tracks Edgar put on various compilations, like the Booster compilations. They were all his tracks, 3 out of the 4 tracks that he wrote for the album. He didn't put any of Ralph Wadpol's tracks on the Tangerine Dream compilation, so they were all completely new to me and very good. And that's it. I mean, with work, I don't know when I'm going to next record a video, forget about record any music of my own. That seems like it's becoming a deep thing in the past for me, which I don't want it to. I have 2 albums 80% finished. That could potentially take me years to get that other 20%. I want to get at least, I want to get both of them out, but Jesus, I don't even know when I can get one of them out now. I just don't know. I can't. I wish I could work very fast sometimes, but I can't. I can't just have a day off and say I'm going to record music. I really need to be kind of inspired. But when I get a day off, I have to go and do laundry and stuff like that, which I probably never mentioned this, but my washing machine broke. I have one of those apartment units with the washing machine and the dryer up top. The dryer broke. The washing machine works. But I can't just replace one or the other because it's basically in a closet. I have to buy a whole new unit. And the only unit I can get to replace it is $2,000. So for the last year and a half, I've been going over to my sister's house to do laundry. But it becomes a long, drawn-out thing. It's easily a half-hour ride. Takes at least 4 hours to do laundry. And, a lot of times I go there and I start, chewing the fat and not watching the laundry. And I've forgotten, and I got 3 loads to do, and I've forgotten it's been down there for 2 hours, and now I stretched it out to 6 or 7 hours, and the whole day's gone. And the way it looks is I probably, at best, will get 1 day a week off. And if I'm going to do laundry, it doesn't leave me any time to do music. And today I did have a day off, and I spent 6 hours sitting waiting for my car to get done. Basic friggin' maintenance. But, every night when I come home, even though it's, cooking dinner or making dinner or doing whatever, I always have music on in the background. And I noticed so much of what I've been listening to on a regular basis, besides the recent things like what Carm sent me, is I put that in a playlist and in my Windows Media Player because everything's on my computer. And I noticed that the things that have been getting regular plays lately, a lot of them are VCLT things that I received. That's hard because I've got thousands of CDs, and obviously when I buy something, it's because I want to hear it. So usually a person is going into their own stuff that they bought. But I've been giving a lot of, and this isn't all of them because I don't even know where I put some of these CDs, but I've got a few of these that have gotten into my nightly playlist for a couple weeks now that are VCLTs. The Charles Ives thing that I showed, I've been playing this nightly, sometimes at very low volume. And I'm kind of falling asleep to it at times, but in a good way. This is one that's got a lot of spins. All these came from Andrew in good old California. I've got others too that I couldn't find. This one, which is playing in the background, this is the Tripla Concordia. I guess this would be classified as early music, which I talked about when I got these CDs. It's lovely stuff. It's not avant-garde at all. I guess I don't have a lot of early music, or I associate early music, and maybe it's incorrect when you're talking about classical music, with recorders, the flute set things, the flute type of recorders. And this music is very heavy on recorders. There's a nice big thick booklet that came with it. And I'm playing it in the background. A lot of big booklet. Great atmospheric album. It's been playing in the back the whole time I've been doing this video. 56 minutes. It's a really good album. I'm not familiar with any of the composers that they cover here. John Jenkins, Matthew Locke, Henry Purcell. Which is great because, I'm learning about new composers. Lovely, lovely stuff. Some people might associate this with almost the kind of music you might hear in the background of a library or something, But it's lovely stuff. And, for the classical music that I do have, I don't actually have a lot of things that are recorder-based. And it's really lovely. And it's been getting played every night and some other things as well. Andrew had sent me a Wergo, great label, the German label, one of the electronic music compilations of modern electronic composers. I think it's volume 12. Volume 12. Computer Music Currents Volume 12 is what it's called. They have this whole computer music series, which I love. I'm addicted to. And I've been playing that as well as the other stuff that I've shown. Richard Lanehart, I've started listening to again. I did a video on him when I discovered his music because I don't know how anybody would know of Richard Lanehart, even hardcore fans of electronic music. I learned of Richard Lanehart about 3 months before he died, not even 3 months before he died, only because I went to a concert of multiple electronic artists, all pretty much unknown. Except one or two, little bit of, I say fame, but one of the guys, a guitarist who's his name I forget right now, recorded Neil Knapp recorded an album in the early days of CDs, so the late 80s, for the Audion label, which was Larry Fast's label. He played. And John Durant, who another guitarist, has a bunch of albums out. Would be the only two people that played this kind of modern electronic music festival day concert that I saw. They're the two artists I've heard of, and there was probably another dozen or so artists that played at this day-long, 12-hour concert. And this guy, Richard Lanehart, was there. I had never heard of him before, or any of the other artists as well. But he was selling some of his CDs at the show. And he was, most of the people played, they didn't, there's a lot of people not playing instruments. It was a lot of sitting there with your Apple laptop and making more like collages of sounds they had already recorded together. Very abstract. I liked a lot of it, but it wasn't a lot of hands-on making of sounds. It was basically dicking around with samples, in the computer. I prefer the guys that played and processed their stuff live. But Richard Lanehart was one of the older guys there. Looked like John Cage. And he goes on stage and he has a synthesizer there and he's playing the keyboard, and he played for the same 25 minutes that everybody was allotted, which is kind of short. And I was like, wow, this is great. And I went out and I bought one of the CDs that was, it only had one piece that was 25 minutes long. It wasn't even a full-length CD. But it was something that he recorded on, I got it here, Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. Sorry for not being prepared. I bought this piece called, this CD at the show, and this was a few years ago, called White Knight. He had others for sale, but the reason this one looked interesting, even though I wasn't aware at the time until after I opened it that it was such a short CD, recorded in 1974 on the Moog synthesizer at the Electronic Music Studio at the State University of New York in Albany. And I'm like, ooh, 74? Moog synthesizer, and it just came out in 2007. I'm glad I bought this one because it's a good piece, but this is really hard to get. I'm willing to bet it's not impossible to get. I think you can get it from a website in Italy or Germany or someplace, but this could be one of those things in the VC that I bet nobody else has. I'm glad I picked that one because he had a few others available. Because after I dug that one in his performance, I wanted to get others. And the other albums of his, or some, I think the ones that he had available there, are a lot easier to get. This is a double disc, and there's a lot of music on here. 10,000 Shades of Blue, which I highly recommend. Strictly electronic keyboards. Really incredible. I've a few months after discovering his music and buying that first CD, he went into the hospital, had an operation, and then suddenly died. And this was within, I think, about 2 months, 2 or 3 months, 3 months the longest from the period when I saw him. And he wasn't ill at all when I saw him or sickly. He was actually assisting the other bands with their sound before he played his performance. And it was one of those sudden things where he went to the hospital. I think he found he had cancer. I'm not sure. And he died really shortly after that. Very sad. And as a result, I had just discovered his music and was just getting into it. I would have loved to send him an email of appreciation or something. And he passed away before I got the opportunity to do that. It was, which is typical when someone dies like that I'm into. Very hard for me to listen to his music since, and it's been, I think, about 3 years now. Maybe more. I have to look. I did a video on the whole, one of my earliest videos was the whole festival. I did a talk about the festival that day and the dates on the video of when the festival took place. Gee, I want to say it was 2011, maybe. And it was very hard for me to listen to his music after that, and as much as I loved it. And just in the last week, I started putting it in my playlist again and listening to it at very low volumes. Both of those albums I have, which are the only two that I have. And I think anybody that likes serious electronic music would like at least that second album that I showed. And I highly recommend it. I'm trying actively to get back into listening to his music again and have it not bother me. And I don't know why that's such an issue with me. But it's typical. Anybody that I'm into, when they pass away, makes it very hard for me to listen to their music again. I guess when they're still alive, I feel like I might be the only guy listening to this particular artist because he's so obscure. But then again, the artist is still around himself, so he knows he created this music. Maybe he's listening to his own albums, but his consciousness is out there and he's still very much alive. And if I ever got the opportunity to correspond with him, I could say, hey, buddy, I'd listen to your music, as obscure as you are. And then when they pass away, sometimes you think, or I think, gee, I might be the only person in the world listening to this, because most of the artists that I appreciate are very obscure. And I doubt that there's probably more than 100 people listening to their music at any given time. And even that would be a lot for some of these artists. So it gets really hard for me. And yet I desire to hear their music after they pass, which is, I think, a natural thing. Just like when David Bowie passed and now his record's all of a sudden number one. Obviously, a lot of people listen to it, but by the same token, there's a lot of people, there's no shortage of David Bowie fans and people listening to his albums. So it's not quite the same when somebody is that popular. With the people that I dig, they're so obscure. A lot of these artists, there's only a few hundred people that even know who they are, and there's even less than them at any given point listening to their music. That's why I like it when my composers are still alive, and I'm glad that Eberhard Weber is still alive, because, and Harold Budd, and some people that have been favorites of mine for many, many years, because the longer I've listened to their music, especially while they're alive, the harder it's going to be when they pass. So, even if Eberhard Weber, say, never put out another album, as long as he's still around, he's, aware of, and actually, to be honest, he's probably one of the better known artists anyway that I listen to. I would say there's more than 300 people that know who he is. Obviously, there's thousands in his case of people who know who he is and actively listen to his music. But it will be hard for me to listen to his music because he's been alive and active so much of the time since I discovered his music in the very late 70s that when he passes, it's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. So, right now, he's still kind of been putting out albums. He said his last album could potentially be his last, the ones that he's making, utilizing his old bass solos and re-editing those solos, and then playing some synthesizer parts over them and having some guests come in and, add maybe some flugelhorn or Jan Garber doing sax or whatever. So there's a potential for those albums to continue coming out. And even after his last one came out and he said this could be my last one, then there was that fantastic album, basically dedicated to him of his works, of, orchestral versions of his works, and Pat Metheny writing a piece based around some of Eberhard's bass solos and stuff like that. And there was this live show put on that they recorded, and Eberhard Weber was there to watch it. So still in my mind, that's kind of an Eberhard Weber album. And that's fairly, very recent still, as of me filming this video anyway. Okay, well, I've, gone on for over an hour again. And probably said nothing. I like to do my videos, even though in a lot of them I'm not saying much of anything. Just to keep in touch now with my VC friends, because I've made so many great friends here. And yet when I look at the content of my videos, I know there's not a lot there in a lot of cases. And then I'll watch somebody's videos, like Ron, my lung puppy, and he does such great videos, and Carm, and everybody that does videos regularly, pretty much, they always do a fantastic job that I can't hope to equal, certainly not. And Ron can go all over the place. And he just does, he can do food, he can do politics, he can do music, he can talk about whatever the hell's going on in the world or observations or whatever. And it's all fantastic in my book. And I can't get close to being that good in any one of the areas that I touch. So sometimes I think this may be a waste of time. But at least for the viewers. For me, I like keeping in touch with these people because they're wonderful. They're some wonderful VC friends. Okay, sorry to have made this one so long. I don't know when my next one will be. It depends on days off or when I get fired, or I might have to wait to get fired from this job because with, the car expense now, in addition with everything else, I need money. And it doesn't look like, I'm going to sell any albums to actually earn any money. So that looks like that's out. Unless I become incredibly prolific and I put out a bunch of crap that really shouldn't be bought, which I don't want to do either. Okay, guys, I hope everybody's doing well. It's still early 2016, but with all the musicians dying, it really kind of started a year or two ago. I don't know who it started with. It didn't start just last year with Edgar Foresta dying in January, but it's picked up steam since then. John Taylor, the great pianist, dying. Kenny Wheeler before him, who was his musical partner for years. The weird thing is, I know the news reported Glenn Frey from the Eagles and David Bowie and, a lot of pop music and jazz music people, whatever. The one thing that wasn't reported that I thought was interesting, when Paul Kantner died from Jefferson Airplane, on the same day, and I'm amazed that the news didn't report this, the same day as that Paul Kantner died, his bandmate died, which wasn't reported. The original female vocalist, Signe, I forget what her last name was, but the original vocalist, female vocalist, on the first Jefferson Airplane album, Jefferson Airplane Takes Off, I think it was called, before Grace Slick, she passed away on the same day. That is just bizarre. And I went, there's an interview with her, audio interview with her, that was just done a few years ago about her days in Jefferson Airplane. And she was only on their first album, but a few years ago they actually came out with a live album that she was on as well. That was one of her last performances with the group. So she's technically on 2 Jefferson Airplane albums. Odd that she died the same day as Paul Kantner, too. So, one of those things, you know, these are the people that were around when I was a kid growing up that were highly influential. Okay, I've gone on for far too long. And like I said, I don't know when I'll be back, and I don't know that I'll have much to say. I'll certainly be back complaining about my job if I still have it next time. You can count on that. And I hope everybody's doing well. I hope all the negativity and the crappy stuff that started in 2016 takes an upswing. And maybe, you know, it would be nice if all the bad stuff gets done early in the year, and then it's all good from there. Don't know if that's possible, but I can hope. And hope everybody else is doing well and surviving. We had a snowstorm this morning again, which I was driving in, not to work, but to go get my car done. I wasn't even sure if the place was going to be open. It was that bad. But thankfully it didn't add up to the 2 feet that we got a couple weeks ago. Wow. Long one. Okay, guys. I'm going to go. Hope everybody's doing well. And hope you all do videos soon that I can watch. Take care. Bye-bye.